Welcome to PR After Hours, your twice weekly cocktail of business, PR, and marketing tips hosted by me, Alex Greenwood. Every week, we bring you virtual happy hours featuring business advice from entrepreneurs and leading thinkers in PR, marketing, and business. We're going to get started in just a moment, so stick with us.
Hi, this is Angelo Ponzi, the host of the Business Growth Cafe podcast, and you're listening to PR After Hours.
So we're going to talk a little bit about B2B marketing on this show. You know, it's PR After Hours, but regular listeners know that we don't discriminate. It's PR pros, it's marketing pros, it's management pros, HR pros. It's basically people who are looking to advance their business, and they're looking for tips and insights from industry leaders. And funny enough, we've got an industry leader with us today. Jeremy Haug is here. He is originally from Germany, came to the U.S. at the age of 8. He's been a teacher, a hand cream salesperson, a sales assistant, a VP of HR, marketing, and finance for a startup, and a CMO, COO of an Inc. 5000 company 3 years in a row. He's recently started his own marketing company to help B2B businesses thrive with marketing. So I think he's in the right place here in the virtual lounge, and we're glad to have him. So we're going to slide a virtual cocktail to him across the bar and say, welcome, Jeremy, to PR After Hours.
Alex, thank you so much. Love the intro, and glad to be here.
Thanks so much. I'm excited to talk to you. Is your focus with your B2B marketing business, what is there a certain sector that you're looking to work with, or are you kind of covering the waterfront?
You know, it's relatively broad. I generally, so for me, I take it and I go, B2B is focused for me for businesses targeting other businesses, right? So, and that is pretty broad, but I tend to go, probably businesses doing less than $10 million a year, right? So I'm not necessarily going after enterprise clients. I'm not opposed to enterprise clients and saying, Jeremy, hey, would you like to work with me? I'm like, I'll figure it out. But my expertise, in the healthcare consulting company that I was in, is we focused on businesses. So we consulted to businesses doing so anywhere from $300,000 to, let's say, $4 or $5 million a year. So that's sort of my sweet spot. I have the reality of targeting business owners in that mindset. And, I've since starting my own business, I've got clients who are targeting homeowners, which not necessarily business to business, but it is a bigger ticket item, right? So I'm in that headspace of, if you're selling something that's $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, $100,000, $1 million product, that's definitely the space that I'm in, because the sale is different when you're selling something where you have to build a long-term relationship versus something, like you're at Costco. It's like, you're selling volume of lower ticket items. Or you've got an Amazon business, and that's just not my specialty. Whereas, building that long-term relationship, high ticket items, or long lifetime customer value, that's really where I thrive, because that's what I know how to do really well.
Well, that sounds great. So let me throw something current to you now. United States, we seem to be coming just barreling out of lockdown and getting back to normal. Are you seeing different challenges arise with your clients, or just in general as a marketer, due to the fact that we are just kind of going from 0 to 60 again?
It's I think we've all kind of had in the last year had to pivot, unless we were already sort of internet based and remote based and that kind of mentality. I don't think that's going away. Even live is awesome, right? Like, I love being in front of people live. I don't think there's anybody, yes, I like working from home. I don't have a problem with it, but I think everybody enjoys future. The businesses that really figure out and have figured out, right, for the last year, being remote and running a digital campaign and selling, over the phone, Zoom calls, things like that. I don't think that's going away. I foresee that, people have gotten used to working from home, and I think that's going to continue. So for my clients, you just have to become more digitally savvy than you ever had to in the past, right? I think 5 years ago, you were able to get away without having your own YouTube channel or having a Facebook account or things like that. I think after last year, that's not possible anymore. And I think even with the reopening, some people may be like, oh, thank God we don't have to do all that stuff anymore that we used to have to do. I think that's a mistake. And I think for anybody who's like, oh, okay, we can just dump what we did for the last year, get everybody back in the office. Let's go back to doing live events. I think, I'm going to touch right on the edge of politics and not go any further of that. Sure. But I think now that it's happened once, I think it can happen again, so I think the mentality of like, okay, COVID-19, we shut everything down, okay, it's happened, right? And I think people will go, okay, like if we look for a comparable in Asia, I think now wearing masks is more common due to all the previous instances, right?
Right.
So I think now is, I've definitely seen some people who are like, good, let me just go back to live events. Let me not worry about all this digital stuff. And so I think if you're in that space and you're thinking, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, let's get everybody back into the office. Let's get only live events. Let's not worry about this YouTube advertising, this Facebook advertising, these virtual events, right? Like I think a lot of challenges out there. People have done challenges successfully. So things like that, I think, are going to continue. And I think the businesses that continue to do those things are going to thrive, especially you're more nimble, right? And eventually we're going to get the businesses that are really smart scale, right? So it's like, ideally you can sell your products nationally, internationally, things like that. And the internet is just so scalable.
Right. I love that. I happen to agree with you. And just as a personal anecdote, when flu season hits this fall, and if I'm on a plane or if I'm at a very busy place, I don't care if I get the stink eye from somebody. I'm going to wear a mask because this last year was the first year in 10 I didn't get the flu, even with a flu shot, because I was wearing masks when I was outside and stuff. So I love that. I think that's very true. Let's talk about B2B stuff, B2B strategy, those sorts of things. Is there one constant, no matter whom you're working with, though, that one immutable fact of marketing that is Jeremy Haug's immutable fact of marketing, that this is what I do? I don't care if you're healthcare, I don't care if you're retail, I don't care if you're selling donuts. Is there one immutable fact that you go by that's a truth of yours?
Well, I have lots, but I think the biggest one is know your customer. And it's one of those things where you go, know your customer. Of course, I know my customer. It's the person who pays me. It's like, well, wait a second. Who are you marketing to? What is your sales materials oriented around, right? And more important than that, oftentimes, is who do you say no to, right? Because I think a lot of business owners, especially in the beginning, go, I need money. I'll take anybody, right? But I understand. It's like since I just started this year my own business, I'm like, it was actually really painful. Somebody was like, okay, Jeremy, please take me on as a client. I'm putting together a contract and I'm like, no, I can't do it. You're not the right fit. I'm not the right person for you, right? Like they had a Shopify store. They had 7 products that were like $25. And I'm like, I'd love to help you, but I'm just not the right fit. So,
it's not you, it's me.
No, it's horrible. It's like, okay, gosh. I think one of the classic, no, it's you, it's not me. No, I'm kidding. Anyways, so, for me, what I found is like one of the first things I did for my own business and that I do for my clients is like, okay, what's an ideal client for you? And I've heard, it's like, oh, everybody's a client for me. I'm like, okay, cool. Do they have to have money? Yes. Yeah, they have to have money. Okay, so how much money do they have to have, right? Like, let's start there. Okay, who spends the most money with you? Okay, if we could attract more of your ideal audience, is that better than me attracting the low tier audience, right? So you can start differentiating. Like for me, my bigger ticket items is usually for business owners doing, probably at least $1 million a year, up to about $5 million a year. I also have clients doing a lot less than that. That doesn't mean that I don't serve both of those avatars, both of those audiences. It just means I go, okay, I know one, I probably have a higher ticket item, more money, more support, and more upside. And so I know that. And for me, a big thing is I know, who they are and sort of the characteristics. So revenue is a characteristic, what the profession is a characteristic, like, and that also helps me to identify, okay, what services am I offering? And then I take it a step further and I go, what is the story they tell themselves, right? So one of my clients is a mold remediation company. So their ideal clients are either homeowners, realtors, because when they buy and sell homes, they got to handle mold. They've got property management groups and doctors. Doctors because their patients sometimes have mold symptoms and they need somebody to come check it out. So I go, okay, these are the 4 ideal audiences, right? And what is the story of each one? Homeowners probably going like, man, I'm not feeling good, right? Is it allergies? Is it this? What's the story? And so you have to, once you have that story, it fits everything into your marketing plan, because now you go, like you can do a blog or an ebook or a webinar that goes, hey, are you a homeowner that's had these symptoms? And are you wondering if it's mold or if it's allergies? Check out our free webinar where we cover that in detail. Or, I go back and I switch it to a realtor, and the realtor is like, it's like, hey, do you want to make the most money when you flip the house or when you sell the house? Make sure that the house doesn't have mold. Let's connect so we can do a free inspection or something like that to make sure that when you sell the house, there's no surprises, right? I don't know. I'm not perfect. Like I don't know all the details of mold remediation, but I do know once I understand who they are and what the product is that we're selling, I can hook those things up. And now I got message, right? And now that gives me a message to attract attention and ideally convert those prospects.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to Angelo Ponzi. He's a marketing guy, just similar to you, and had him on last week. And he was talking about the first thing he said is, do businesses know their customers? And they all think they do. And I think you're saying the same thing. They all think they do, but I'm sure you run up against this where they don't necessarily really understand fully. Now, do you do anything? If you get in there and you start working with a client or you're talking to a prospective client and you feel like they really don't know who their audience really is, do you insist that, okay, we're going to do some market research as part of my services here before we do another thing, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, I think it's honestly, it's usually part of the conversation. It's just part of like, look, when I get to know you, it's not like there's gradients, right? There's gradients of knowledge. So, if you're Nike, you probably have 17 customer avatars and each one has like okay, when I'm selling these particular shoes, I know all of these different characteristics, the age, the demographics, the psychographics, all of those details. When you're just getting started, you're doing less than $1 million. I'm like, okay, what product do you sell? Who do you sell it to? And let's get some basics going, right? Because,
Right.
Could I spend $50,000 on market research to truly understand the customer? 100%. Is that something a small or medium-sized business needs to do? No, right? Is it ideal? Sure, but it's not something where it's like, I don't need to drop that money until you're making 10, 20, 30, $40 million a year. And I'm not an expert at that. So I'm also willing to say like, look, I just need the basics. Like, who are you selling to and what are the main delineations? And honestly, it's often just a matter of asking the question and getting the person to sit back and go, well, I sell to everybody. Okay. Well, who's your ideal client? Well, everybody. Okay. Well, who pays you the most money? Well, no, not everybody. Oh, okay. Well, like I have a printing company and it's like, oh, well, the printing company, for them, it's, schools or churches or the government. I'm like, okay, so those guys pay you more because they have more need, right? Like a school with 3,000 students that needs to print T-shirts. Like, okay, that's a bigger customer than a small business that prints makes polos for their team. It's like, okay, cool.
Jeremy,
so it's like, go ahead.
How do you manage expectations though? Because this is something, now I do some marketing, but I'm more PR on that side. But managing expectations is a huge part of what I do because, for example, PR side, right? I don't own the printing presses. I don't own the cameras and the broadcast booth and all that stuff, but I'm trying to get you in front of those people, or I'm trying to get a conversation on social going. I don't own Twitter. I don't own all these things that I can get people to do it, right? I'm just trying to get you the best possible shot of getting in front of those people. But some people don't understand that. So I've learned over the years, especially running my own shop, I almost always under promise and over deliver. That's a key thing I do. It's not to fool people, but if you go in not careful and they don't have realistic expectations, it can be a very unpleasant conversation for both of you. So I'm curious, how do you temper expectations when you are onboarding?
So for me, I actually set up my business model in a results-based financially. So I tend to try and undercharge compared to any of my competitors. And then I go, pay me per lead or pay me per revenue. So for me, I try to closely align myself to my clients. So for them, I mean, I have clients where it's like, okay, pay me $400 a month and then $20 per lead. You know, and so there's a relationship there where it's like, okay, cool. As you make more money, I make more money. And so that, you know, that doesn't necessarily directly answer your question. So I go, look, sometimes it can take a couple of months, right? So for me, on the marketing side of things, you know, I have the personal belief I can get results for anybody in my space, right? Like I'm not an Amazon expert, I'm not a Shopify, but if you're targeting other business owners, you know, let's say you're targeting chiropractors, dentists, you're targeting, I don't know, whatever, any kind of like a business setting, I go, okay, look, there's enough elements in place, whether we're doing Facebook ads, Google ads, YouTube, we're creating an ebook, we're doing this. Like I know that I don't know enough that I can always get it right the first time, right? Like I think any marketing expert that says, yeah, man, I know your niche, I know your space so well, we're going to blow it out of the park on the first try. I think they're full of crap. I mean, I think if like it's, even if you're targeting the exact same industry, let's say you're targeting dentists, you're like, people are not the same in every location. If I'm targeting in Florida versus in New York, the exact same ad will not convert the same way. So,
Right.
you know, so for me, I go managing expectations. One, my pricing structure is set up in a way where I'm like, look, I always position it like this. If I start at, let's say, the price point's $500, and I'm like, you know, the most agencies are just like, look, I just need to deliver $600 worth of value, and I get to keep the client, right? So for me, I go, I'm going to charge you, let's say, $300, and as I continue to deliver more and more value, then my, you know, my buy-in, my opportunity with the client gets bigger and bigger, because if the client's winning, I'm winning. And so I think it gives me more freedom with clients to go, look, it might not be perfect month one, right? It might take us 2 or 3 months. It might take us 6 months. But as long as there's this active engagement on my part of things, I think they see that and then they go, okay, cool, this is working. Or sometimes it's even a point of like, look, instead of charging by lead, I'm like, look, pay me when you make money, right? Give me a percentage of the revenue that you go and close. And there's some risk involved in that for me, right? Because I'm mainly the marketing side of things. I don't necessarily schedule appointments. I don't necessarily close deals, but I'm putting these different things in place so that the clients, when they're ready, like when they're succeeding, I'm succeeding. And that tends to nullify expectation problems often.
Right.
Not always, but often.
All right, as we sadly are wrapping up soon here, I'm really enjoying this. I wanted to ask you this. What's the one thing you wish business owners understood, particularly in the B2B space? What's the one thing about marketing, at least, that you wish they understood?
Well, that's a good question. That's a good question. I think marketing is an investment. And look, no matter what money you throw into marketing is not a waste of money. Like, yes, that marketing can be wasted, and I'll even sell you saying, yeah, you know, hey, you're wasting money here. At the end of the day, every time you invest in your brand, you're investing in yourself. You're believing that you are valuable, and you're bringing that out to the rest of the world. For me, I believe that every dollar I spend on marketing to make myself more known and my products more known is a valuable dollar, because it shows the world that I'm confident in myself to go, hey,
Right.
I'm awesome, right? Like I believe my product is valuable. And so I think business owners often look at marketing as an expense and just like, oh, I have to do this. But marketing for me should be a 10-to-1 return almost always, right? And
Yeah.
I don't think you get that anywhere. You know, maybe if you do Dogecoin or Tesla, if you got real lucky or something like that. But at the end of the day, you know, I think if you're smart and if you're learning and you get marketing right, marketing should always be making you $10 for every dollar you put in over the long term. if you're really smart, right? Like if you've got the business model figured out, look, if you're selling widgets, and you buy them for $1 and you sell it for $2, you're not going to get 10 to 1. But if you get somebody to buy the widget once and then you put them on a recurring revenue stream where every month they buy a widget, now you've spent $1 and they're paying you $2 every month for the next 3 years. Awesome.
The Professor Scott Galloway, who I really pay a lot of attention to, he's Prof G. He's got a couple of podcasts. He's with the Stern Business School in New York. He calls them rundles, the recurring revenue bundles, which are usually through subscriptions. And then you just triggered me on that. You can sell to people once, but if you can do what, think about every TV app now. If you're a cord cutter like me, I'm now almost spending what I used to spend, by the way, on cable because, it's only $6 to get Shudder every month, and I like horror movies and Joe Bob Briggs, so why not? But then I realized at the end of the month, I've got all these rundles, right? That's what you're talking about, isn't it? Because people forget as consumers about those things, and then it's too much trouble to get rid of them. But you, as the business that just sold them, right? You got this recurring revenue stream. Is that kind of where you're going?
Oh yeah, 100%. And it's something as a business owner, if you don't have any recurring revenue, every month you start at 0.
Yeah.
If you have recurring revenue, you get to start back where all that recurring revenue. Even if you get a big upfront onboarding fee, but then afterwards you've got $50, $100, $1,000 in recurring revenue, your headspace changes because you go, okay, I got to $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a month. And it's that recurring, it gives you stability. Even if you have a bad month, it's not like you're at 0 and you have to figure out and you pull reserves and savings and a credit card and everything else. But it's like, and marketing gets much more fun because marketing, if a customer is only worth, let's say $100 to you, marketing goes, okay, I've got $10 to make $100 client. But if a client's worth $10,000 to you, okay, now I've got $1,000, right? And if you get a client, instead of only spending that $100, you get them to come back to you every month, whether it's, you're a restaurant, so you get to get people to come back again and again and again, or you're a mold remediation company. And let's say, okay, you sell them the mold remediation once, but now you go, hey, we have a membership where you pay monthly and we'll come check your house every 6 months. I mean, same thing with pesticide guys or anybody else is right. You build that recurring revenue stream, you save all that time on selling newly, right? It takes a ton of effort to get a client. It takes a lot less effort to get that client to pay again and again and again.
Yeah, exactly right. Jeremy Haug, how do people get a hold of you if they want to learn more? These are great tips. I can tell already you're very good at what you do. How do people find out more?
Sure. Yeah. So my website's B2BbusinessExperts.com. So that's the letter B, the number 2, the letter B, business experts with an S at the end.com. My email's jeremy@b2bbusinessexperts.com. So both of those, contact me on my website. There's a little chat bot. There's a contact us. I'm on Facebook. You can message me, so lots of ways to contact me for sure.
Jeremy, thanks so much for joining us here. We really did learn a lot. And of course, the door's always open here at the Virtual Lounge. Thanks for joining us, Jeremy.
Thanks.
Hello, listeners. It's me, Alex, from PR After Hours. I hope you're enjoying the show so far. And I wanted to talk to you just for a moment about the way I get this show right into your earbuds every week. It's because I use Anchor FM. Now, I've told you previously that I've been podcasting since 2006, back when we used stone knives and bear skins and a couple of Dixie cups and string. Anchor FM has really streamlined this and made it simpler for people who don't know the first thing about setting up a podcast or don't have, time to learn all the pro tools and stuff, because it's all right here. First thing it's important to know is it's free. There are certain tools that will allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will then distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. That's huge. Distribution is a big pain in the butt, to be honest with you, so it's really great Anchor FM can do that for you, and you're not paying hosting fees. That adds up every month. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started, and be sure to join me in the Virtual Cocktail Lounge on PR After Hours. Hey listeners, are you considering new ways to build awareness for yourself, your clients, your brand, your business? Might I suggest the podcast option? The podcast option is actually my new ebook available exclusively on Amazon.com. In this fast-reading book, I give you the benefit of my 15 years podcasting and broadcasting experience with stories, practical tips, and advice from hundreds of hours I've spent as a podcast host, producer, and guest. The podcast option is mandatory reading for those new to podcasting and a welcome addition to the veteran podcasters library. You can get the podcast option, tips and tricks to make podcasting work for you, exclusively on Amazon.com, or you can click on the link in the show notes or visit prafterhours.com. The podcast option, I hope you will choose it. Oh, you know what that means? Looks like it's last call here at your virtual lounge for PR news, views, and interviews. We'll keep it short and sweet. Just remind you, if you like the show, there's many ways you can help us keep it going, not the least among which is to rate this podcast. Simply go to the show notes at prafterhours.com or wherever you're getting this podcast and click on the link. ratethispodcast.com/after, and it will take you to Apple Podcasts and a couple other places very easily. One click, you write your review, it's done. Can't tell you enough how important it is to get ratings on those sites so that we can build our audience and keep bringing you the kind of information you need every week for your business. Also, don't forget, if you want to sponsor the show, give us a tip in the virtual tip jar, or ask a question. There are links in the show notes. Well, I think it's time that I cleaned up and closed up for this edition of PR After Hours here on Anchor FM.